Hey YouTube Trail fam, welcome back to Everyday Backpacker, and thanks for joining me on that absolutely beautiful trip over the Beartooth Pass. Today we're going to talk about something a little bit serious. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to backcountry practices, there aren't a whole lot of things that I get really caught up on. As long as you're doing your best and having a great time, generally speaking, doesn't matter what kind of gear or processes or whatever you're using. But there is one backcountry practice that is a back burner issue in the backcountry that really burns my backside. Yeah. And that is when you leave toilet paper in the backcountry. So on the last trip I went out with Connor up to Elk Lake. Now Elk Lake is part of a really popular trail here in Montana that some people call the beaten path, which I don't actually like the name of that, but we'll call it that way because it's what it's known for. While we were up there, I was absolutely disgusted by the amount of used toilet paper and feminine hygiene products that I found just on the periphery of the campsite. Now, I didn't film any of it for evidence because, well, honestly, who wants to film people's used toilet papers and piled up rocks covering up their poo and all that, and then sharing it on YouTube? Yeah, I probably would do that, but that's beside the point. Regardless, it was a really disgusting situation. And literally every area that I went to, there was some either pile of what I call a Charmin bloom or a pile of rocks with toilet paper sticking out of it. And the really disturbing part of it is the majority of it wasn't buried at all, which means that more than likely the poo wasn't buried as well. And that in its own right is another issue. The problem with not burying your poo in a cat hole is that animals can get into it and eat it, and they become habituated to our food through our poo. It's a little bit disgusting to think about, but it is something that happens. The other thing is that if it does rain and that poo dissolves, where does the poo go? It's going to go into water sources. It could potentially go back into the campsite that you were trying to keep it out of. Either way, it's just really not a very hygienic way to do things. Now, there are some people that go to, in some places that require you to go to the extreme of packing all of it out, using a wag bag to take everything out. I'm not going to talk about that today because I do bury my poo most of the time. But since 2007, I have actually been packing out my toilet paper as well. Used toilet paper, that is. Now, ever since I started doing this as an avid backpacker back in 2007, as well as teaching it in backpacking programs, I'm always surprised by the amount of people who react with absolute revulsion. Take my dirty toilet paper with me? Especially when you consider the fact that backpacking, by definition, is getting away from all of the creature comforts that we know and love. So what is it about this particular practice that seems to freak so many people out? Generally speaking, I get several different reactions. I'm going to address those reactions and then give a little bit of an argument as to why that reaction may or may not be a valid concern. Now, the first concern that a lot of people have is simply the ooh factor. Some people have a hard time getting past the simple idea that they might have to carry something with a little bit of human waste on it. But let's be honest with ourselves. Are we going to continue to lie about the fact that we have never accidentally gotten a little bit of poo on our hands when we're wiping ourselves? Yeah. This candy bar is getting a little bit melty. Now, of course, that's a pretty legitimate excuse because nobody really likes to get poo on themselves unless it's chocolate flavored. And the reality is that there are some pretty simple ways that you can do to help prevent yourself from getting into this situation. And I'm actually going to address those, but later on in the video in the third and final issue that usually gets brought up with packing out your toilet paper. But as far as personal hygiene goes, there's some things that you can put into your poop bag, for lack of a better term, that will help you in the unfortunate instant that you may end up with a little unwanted guest on your hands. And those are taking along wilderness wipes. These things are great not only for cleaning your hands, but also cleaning your face at the end of the day, and can ward off certain other issues that come up with the posterior region of the body, such as chafing and things like that. And then, of course, I think most people probably bring some sort of hand sanitizer. These are just a couple things that you can do to ward off the U factor. The second comment that usually comes up is alternative methods of dealing with the toilet paper. Usually one of two things, either burying it or burning it. Now, burying it is something that is allowed by leave no trace principles, as long as you are adequately burying everything else. So 6-foot cat hole and all that. The problem runs into the fact that it takes a lot longer for even biodegradable toilet paper to break down than we think it does. And sometimes it can reappear, so to speak. And so generally speaking, the preferred method is still to pack it out. The other option that I hear a lot, frankly, is just a bad idea all around, and that is, well, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and burn my toilet paper. Do you want to disappoint Smokey Bear? Because that's how you disappoint Smokey Bear. Now, no doubt you've probably either said it yourself or run into somebody who says, well, I'm perfectly safe, I've been burning it for years, I've never had an issue. Well, burning toilet paper does actually account for quite a few wildfires in the United States. In fact, in 2019, in Grand Canyon National Park, a 71-year-old man burned down 64 acres of wilderness fire, and he was charged to pay $53,000 in restitution for that fire. I'm pretty sure he probably at one point said, it's no big deal, I've done this before. I know how to put out a fire. In 2011, another backpacker created a fire in New Mexico that burned 83 square miles from burning his toilet paper and campfire. He was ordered to pay $2.7 million in restitution. And then in 2015, a biker in Idaho burned 73 acres by lighting his toilet paper on fire. And I'm pretty certain every single one of these guys, or people, probably did this before and never had any issues. The reality is that no matter how much you prepare for it, there's a good possibility that you could accidentally create a forest fire. And is that really worth not dealing with the ooh factor?
So of course the problem with burning tissue paper is as it burns it becomes very light and it's very susceptible to wind.
And the third and final issue that I've heard brought up a lot is, well, what happens if my dirty toilet paper contaminates my food? Now again, I've been doing this since 2007. That's almost 15 years, and I have never had an issue with my used toilet paper coming anywhere near to being in contact with my food. However, this continues to be a pretty big concern. So let's examine how many barriers there are in the way that I do my toilet paper and my food storage. All right, so the secret of my success for keeping my toilet paper from getting in contact with my food is several different barriers in the way that I arrange it on my pack. So first off, my used toilet paper goes into a plastic bag. Now you can also put like a dryer freshener in there to give it a little bit of scent protection, but basically it goes into one plastic bag. That plastic bag then goes into my poop bag, or again, a siliconized nylon ditty bag. That in turn goes on the outside of my pack. My food, on the other hand, goes on the inside of my pack, which makes my pack a barrier in its own right. My food is then going to go into, which comes in its own container, then goes into another plastic bag, which is sealed, and that in turn goes into my bear bag, which then goes onto the inside of my pack. So that contains several different barriers of protection. All right, so as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of defense between my dirty toilet paper and my food. Again, I've been doing this for a long time and I have never had an issue with my poop getting into my food bag. I don't store my used toilet paper with the rest of my trash, which does go in my bear bag. So therefore, there's very little chance that my food is ever going to become contaminated with my dookie towel. All right, so as you can see, with a little bit of planning, some extra plastic bags, and some hand sanitizer, it was really actually pretty safe to be able to pack out your toilet paper and not really change a whole lot about what you do as a backpacker in general. And the benefit of this is you don't have to worry about going into a campsite and seeing a whole bunch of people's toilet paper lying around. Because let's face it, what's worse? Dealing with our own toilet paper and packing it out, or going into an area and having to deal with somebody else's used toilet paper. Personally, I'd rather do a little bit of extra work on my own and try to keep that area that I love clean for others to be able to enjoy as well. Ultimately, though, what you do is up to you. The only thing I ask is that you try to be as safe as you can. I'm not going to be the guy out there who's going to be like, hey man, you need to pack that out, dude. Seriously, that's the wrong thing to do. Because it's just not cool. But I did want to give some people some alternative thought processes to consider their actions. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And again, although I use a lot of humor in this episode, the reality is we're all hikers. Let's all get along. Let's all have fun, and let's do our best to make sure that the nature, our campsites, and everything else are good for each of us to use. Thanks again for all your support. If you like what you see, don't forget to hit subscribe. And as always, keep hiking on.